you see robots and AI and corporations playing out with that, as humans? I'm sure you got some insights on that.
Well, when I talk about the doom or the challenges that society will have, it is around this retraining, and it is around the exacerbation of existing gaps in society. And whether those gaps are racial gaps or geographic gaps or socioeconomic gaps,
Hmm.
they are substantive gaps in a lot of different societies, certainly in the United States, which is the main focus of study of the book. And if we do not do the retraining necessary to get people into good, what are traditionally middle class jobs, which are growing. Pre-COVID, there were more job openings than there were unemployed people in the United States. It is the matching of those two, which is an issue.
Mm.
And so it gives me hope when I see different technologies coming on stream that use VR and a host of other new modalities to help train people. Because who does this training is a big question that we have yet to answer. Is it the education system? Do the high schools start doing it? Is it a post-secondary thing in the education system? Is it a personal responsibility issue that people have to get their own headsets and do their own VR trainings or take their own online courses? Do companies do it? Are companies doing it because they're being required to by government and government mandate to you? Anytime you let a worker go, you have to provide 100 hours of retraining? Or are they doing it out of their own demand because they can't get workers from the education system or from workers on their own to do it? Unknown. But I do know that if we don't do it, if we let those workers fall behind, if we let those communities fall behind, it has very, very negative implications, and that's another very powerful lesson from history. We don't do it to our folly,
Yeah,
to our death.
yeah. I think we've got to bring everyone along for the ride. If we think that we're just going to use, cheap labour as cannon fodder to feed the corporation's profit machine. And you did use I read a bit of your book in that area, and that was that the union started to protect the workforce from the abuse by the Henry Fords and the others that actually tried to basically use cheap labour and treat them like it's just a new form of slavery. And
I would say that what we see through the history of work is an undulating power balance between companies and workers, where the
yep,
upper hand is traditionally held by companies. And these three industrial revolutions, which bring in these huge step functions of technological change, mechanization, electrification, and computerization, massively tilt that balance of power to companies. And companies tend to abuse it.
hmm
And then there are forces that rise to help workers. Those forces are regulation, the social safety net, and to your point, unions.
hmm
And the role unions have played through the history of work has been a very, very beneficial one for workers. Now, we can argue what's happened to the union movement over the last 50 years, whatever time frame you want to put on it. What gives me hope is the evolution of the union movement. And I think about something like the fight for 15 here in the United States. The fight for a $15 minimum wage. Right now, the federal minimum wage is $7.25, and it differs state by state. The fight for 15 was a movement that was started in Seattle by the SEIU, the Service Employees International Union, but it morphed, Jeff. It morphed into a grassroots activist, mostly non-union,
yeah.
activist-led campaign, which has led to several states, I think at this point the majority of states, moving their state minimum wage up towards, none of them are at it yet, but towards $15 an hour. And so that is a powerful, powerful statement about how workers can unite in a common cause, because it's not the union movement per se. That's the movement that has, or the entity, the union as we know it, that has come and crystallized for workers. But it's the idea of workers bounding together to collectively enforce their power to bring that power balance somewhat back into harmony.
Do you see that as one part of the solution to bring that imbalance between the power of the corporation and the worker into place? What else do you see?
I do. I mean, I don't know if it's the union movement as it exists, because the union movement as it exists certainly the United States, has struggled mightily over the last 30, 40 years. So whether it's an evolution of that movement or some other structure, I think the other things that become very important here are the regulatory environment.
Yeah.
And so whenever I give a speech about this, I'll always end up with a point you and I made earlier, which is predicting the future of work is hard, right? Like we don't really know what's going to happen. We don't know how it's going to happen, but we do get a ability to influence it. And especially those people that live in democracies, we get the right to choose the men and women that are going to sit and determine what the regulatory structure is, determine what the social safety net is, determine what environments the unions exist in or workers' rights exist in. And so I would point to the regulatory environment, which in the United States and in a number of other Western democracies has been rolled back. And we can argue if those are good things or bad things, but the fact of the matter, they've been rolled back. And the fact of the matter is that happens a lot of time to the detriment of workers. That may be what we want as a society. But that is the point. It is up to us to choose. We can vote for the people that will change the regulatory environment and maybe make the minimum wage $25 an hour, right? We can do that. I don't have a position as to which is right and which is wrong. My statement is simply is that we get a voice in how the world of work, how the future of work unfolds.
Yeah.